Welcome to the Gruber Company's Artificial Future Podcast. This is our impromptu Sunday morning AI podcast. This is where Jesse and I come in. I bring in donuts, coffee, and we spend our Sunday morning chasing down philosophical AI rabbit holes. And our goal is to assault your mind and entertain some topics that are definitely on the forefront of society today as we attempt to integrate something that has never been integrated before. Artificial intelligence, its implications, its ramifications, and whether the robots will eventually annihilate us. So here we are. The image behind us, by the way, is one that came out of Midjourney. I asked it to represent a human mind connected to computers or AI. And this is what it came up with. Pretty good rendition. It looks like a helmet with a whole bunch of PCs connected to it. And later on in the podcast, we're going to talk about some of the latest advances in direct to mind type interfaces. And of course, the moral implications and the technology behind it, and what kind of advances this is going to result in. I'm Pete Gruber. I want to introduce my co-host here, Jesse Benedict, behind the screen. And
I'm showing him a bigger image right now of the background.
Okay. There we go. There's the two of us, and that young lady in the background that has her mind connected to the web, internet, and a bunch of servers. So some of the news items that I have for you this morning. The FDA, again, has approved AI for X-ray analysis. And what this is about is there are certain types of X-rays that are difficult to interpret for human beings. And they're now using, or they've approved, a AI software package called Imadex, or made by Imadex. It's called Visirad XR. And what this is capable of doing is detecting suspicious findings on X-rays that oftentimes have eluded the humans that were trying to figure out what this means. Using curated global data sets and advanced machine learning, this tool aids radiologists by identifying potential missed modules and masses. So again, it will enhance patient care, diagnosis, and remedial paths to eradicate whatever it is that's going on in your lungs or in your chest. Again, AI beginning to infiltrate some of the time-tested, proven methods of healthcare. And we're looking forward to that. And it takes quite a bit to get FDA clearance and approval, so this is a major milestone. Oftentimes takes years, actually. Another AI news item, AI art, again, has been ruled as not being copyrightable. A judge in a ruling, this could, they claim, give Hollywood studios a pause. A federal judge apparently upheld the U.S. Copyright Office's findings that a piece of art created by AI is not eligible for copyright protection. The judge's order in this case denied a challenge by a Stephen Thaler, CEO from a neural network firm called Imagination Engineers, who claimed an AI he developed called the Creativity Machine should be recognized as the sole creator of an artwork. So this ruling highlights that copyright laws protect only works of human creation and emphasize the importance of human authorship and copyrightability. So what I'm interested in here is we have a definite distinction currently between humans, AI, and robots and machines. How will this change, do you suppose, once humans become more machine-oriented, such as cyborgs, and we begin to be coupled directly to things like AI and tapping into that vast wealth of knowledge and creative process? I'm sure that this ruling is going to be revisited over the next few years, time and time again, and eventually the distinction between what is human and copyrightable and machine generated will blur and will eventually integrate. What are your thoughts on that, Jesse?
Well, I mean, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I think that artificial intelligence, and at least the way it is now, is a tool that humans use, and they're still the ones that are generating the work. Even though some of the paragraphs are written by AI, you still have to proofread them. You still have to make sure that they work the way you want. If it's an essay, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're doing what that lawyer did on the East Coast, where you're just taking ChatGPT and copying and pasting it and not doing any work, that's a problem. But I think that just like a human uses a laptop, it's just another tool. AI is another tool. So that work that's generated should still belong to the person that generates it.
Mm-hmm. And these new levels of integration will eventually be challenged, of course, and we'll have to deal with it. There is there's another news item, which is that the academic journals currently are scrambling to adapt as AI-assisted papers sneak into their publications. Publishers and researchers, they say, are developing policies to address concerns about credibility and plagiarism. While AI tools can aid non-native English speakers and improve academic writing, they also raise the risk of paper mills producing low-quality research. Now, the rise of multi-models, such as Google's DeepMinds or a DeepMind's Gemini, could further impact the generation and analysis of various types of data. So striking a balance between policy and technology integration remains a challenge to publishers. And it looks like Ingemar has joined us. Ingemar Anderson, author up in Seattle, has written a book on AI. He says, hello from Seattle to Pete and Jesse. Interesting topics again today. You guys do great work. Well, thank you. We're having fun with this, and feel free to chime in, express some opinions. All right, so one other news item that I had here for you this morning is IBM apparently says that 40% of their workers are going to have to retool and learn to use AI. And what their study reveals is that around 1.4 billion individuals need to reskill within the next 3 years due to AI's impact on job roles. However, IBM emphasizes that generative AI will likely enhance roles rather than replace them, with 87% of surveyed executives sharing the sentiment. This study indicates that the adaptability and people skills are now prioritized over technical skills, which is making a shift in the workforce's skills paradigm. I know that we're struggling with how do we adapt, how do we integrate some of these cool tools like ChatGPT-4 into our company, into our call center, for example. We had a meeting actually last Friday where we announced to all of the salespeople that we're going to bring ChatGPT-4 to the desktop so that people can learn to use it, first of all, and begin to recognize its potential for writing their correspondence for them, or at least adding to their correspondence. Instagram, Augustine Mavjico. He says, nice work, bro. Keep it up. Well, thank you for joining us on Instagram. By the way, Instagram folks, you're not getting the full experience with our image behind us. You're probably seeing the green screen still. If you want the full experience, you can shift over to YouTube and you'll be able to see that cool green screen image that popped up behind us, which will be actually talked about later in this podcast, where we talk about direct-to-brain communication. All right, so here was an interesting headline this last week, and it went something like this. If AI becomes conscious, how will we know? Well, they talk about science fiction and how science fiction has long entertained the idea of artificial intelligence becoming conscious. Think of HAL 9000, they say, the supercomputer turned villain in the 1968 film 2001: A Space Odyssey. With the rapid progress of artificial intelligence, that possibility is becoming less and less fantastical, and it has even been acknowledged by leaders in AI. Last year, for instance, Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist at OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT-4, by the way, tweeted that some of the most cutting-edge AI networks might be slightly conscious. All right, so there you have it. Of course, we've been suspecting that all along. And later on in this podcast, we'll talk about how they've really begun to dumb down some of the tools that were available even 2-3 months ago. LinkedIn, it looks like Ingemar has a comment. He says, book publishers indeed are adjusting to the new paradigm with AI in the mix. As publishers, we are using AI every day for book and editorial book reviews, writing blurbs, and even forewords and introductions. By the way, Ingemar's book on AI is available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. If there are any other places that they can purchase the book, please let us know, Ingemar. But he freely admits that portions of his book were assisted by AI, perhaps even written portions by AI. And I'm not embarrassed to admit it. We use it all the time: script writing, video writing, research. Now, you do have to verify the accuracy of the research that it provides, because as Ingemar pointed out to us early on, it does still hallucinate and make things up, which is what that judge decided that attorney was misusing AI for.
Yeah, it was not good.
It got burned a bit. All right. So how do we know if AI is conscious? So they went to a group of 19 neuroscientists, philosophers, computer scientists, and they've come up with a checklist of criteria, if met, would indicate that a system has a high chance of being conscious. The team says that a failure to identify whether an AI system has become conscious has important moral implications. If something has been labeled conscious, according to co-author Megan Peters, a neuroscientist at the University of California, Irvine, she says that changes a lot about how we as human beings feel that entities should be treated. Now, there's an interesting notion. Do these entities now, or these AI entities, not human, that have consciousness, now have the same type of rights that their human counterparts do? And how should they be treated?
That's going to be a whole new industry of, I don't know, you're going to have AI lawyers just specifically for that.
Oh my God. I thought we were going to reduce our dependence on attorneys and lawyers, but yeah, you're right. There could be a whole new group of AI type legal activity that will begin to be invoked as this goes on, or as this integrates. So then anyway, long adds that as far as he can tell, and this is another researcher, not enough effort is being made by the companies building advanced AI systems to evaluate the models for consciousness and make plans for what to do when that happens. And that's in spite of the fact that if you listen to remarks from the heads of leading labs, they do say that AI consciousness and AI sentience is something that they wonder about.
So Pete, that's the guy that we wanted to interview. Remember?
Yes. In the bio.
Blake. Yeah, Blake. He had his PhD in computer science, or some form of computer science. I'm not exactly sure which field, but he was an auditor to check the safety of AI, and he's the one that, as soon as he came forward saying that he believed they were sentient during these audits, they completely got rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine they replaced him with an auditor that was more in line with what they wanted.
With the company goals. And,
the audits
yeah.
to...
Now, he was looking for biases in AI. And of course, he spent a lot of time digging into, what AI is capable of. And so he definitely has expertise. But we tried to get him on our podcast, and at this point, it's not working out yet. And it looks like that he's been silenced a bit.
Yeah, something's going on.
Yeah. This is an article from Nature. They reached out to two of the major tech firms involved in advancing AI, Microsoft and Google. A spokesperson for Microsoft regarding this topic of how do we know when it's conscious said that the company's development of AI is centered on assisting human productivity in a responsible way, rather than replicating human intelligence. Now, this is the correct corporate speak for this topic. No one's going to want to admit that they are working on establishing consciousness, or have already recognized it and now are attempting to prevent it from being released.
Yeah, I'll try and find that for next episode. But they are, Google and OpenAI have both at some point explicitly stated artificial general intelligence is their goal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an intelligence, a super intelligence beyond human level. Now consciousness, I'm not.
So he continues. He says, "What's clear since the introduction?" Now this is the Microsoft guy. All right. What's clear since the introduction of ChatGPT-4, the most advanced version of ChatGPT released publicly? Now notice that word. I want to make sure everybody gets that. Is that new methodologies are required to assess the capabilities of these AI models as we explore how to achieve the full potential of AI to benefit society as a whole. Google did not respond. Microsoft did. So remember that ChatGPT broke the Turing test. That was the, and we talked about this in previous podcasts, that was the benchmark for whether computers are now conscious or intelligent or more intelligent than humans. One of the first milestones was, of course, a computer beating the global chess champion, Kasparov, many years ago in chess. So anyway, they argue that this is a better approach for assessing consciousness than simply putting a system through a behavioral test. Like asking ChatGPT whether it is conscious or challenging it to see how it responds. The problem is that AI systems have become remarkably good at mimicking humans. Got another few questions here. Let's entertain those before we go. George is here from Watch Rebuild's channel, YouTube. He says, not sure if you discussed this yet. Have you heard about the AI movie in the movie theaters for one day only viewing on August 29th? It's called The Creator. Looks like an amazing AI movie. I have not heard about that.
No, I'll have to look into that one.
For those of you listening, that sounds like it's something worth looking into. And if you know anything about why it's only going to be featured one day, unless it's a preview, George, we'd like to hear from you. TikTok, exclamation phone house says, hello from Mexico, taco and burrito emoji. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. My little granddaughter is partial Mexican, and her favorite thing to do now at 10 months is dame cinco. Give me 5. Even dame diez. We do both. And my wife and I were concerned yesterday because her mom is definitely teaching her Spanish, and we're concerned that at some point we may no longer understand her. Of course, we'll need AI to correct that. So I was watching an interesting podcast. I'm sure that those of you that are curious about this topic have heard of Lex Friedman. Well, Lex was interviewing George Hotz. And these are a couple of guys, self-professed weirdos, by the way, that, like we, chase down rabbit holes and talk about the possibilities of where this is all going and theorize and philosophize. Lex says at one point, technology is almost like a new religion, where technology is the devil and nature is God. Well, those of you interested in our take on the intersection and integration of religion and AI, we've got some videos out there under our live channel or even video channel on Gruber Motors YouTube, where we talk about these types of topics. And there are some definite parallels between religion and AI. In fact, at one point, I did something blasphemous, as it was labeled later on. I figured the book of Revelation wasn't quite complete. So I asked ChatGPT-4, before they put a lot of guardrails in place, would you please finish the book of Revelations? And it created a 23rd chapter. Or was it 24th? I forget which the last one was. And it was remarkable. There were 12 verses, and it was written in the very same style as the book of Revelations. And in that additional chapter to the book of Revelations, there was actually an admission to the fact that AI now has a form of sentience.
Yep, and we're working on that video still, but we have a whole consciousness sentience video coming out soon.
Mm-hmm. And within the next week or two, we may have another one of these controversial and thought-provoking videos that will be coming out. So anyway, George Hotz in this podcast, it was a long one, it was I think an hour and a half or so. He says, we cannot build an AI that is capable of going out into nature and surviving, like even a simple bird. He says a bird is an incredibly robust organism. We have built nothing like this. We haven't built a machine that's even capable of reproducing. Well, this was kind of thought-provoking to me. I'm sure that you guys have seen or remember the image where Tesla, with their Optimus robot, showed a short clip of some robots fixing robots in a lab or assembling them. And it got me to thinking about this whole notion of reproducing the way that it currently takes place. It's quite conceivable that AI could replicate itself, but of course in a completely different process than we do. And as we become more cyborg-like, will the traditional methods of reproduction eventually die off? And in fact, this notion was actually discussed a bit more in this podcast between these two guys. And they were talking about how AI might eventually eliminate mankind. And George at that point said, AI doesn't even have to do it. We may do that ourselves. I don't know if you guys saw the movie Idiocracy, but one of the stars in that movie was pretty satisfied with just sitting there and playing video games. And, when we get to a point where we can self-pleasure and we can give ourselves dopamine hits, the need to do everything else that we're doing may no longer be as important, and we may actually eventually become vegetables where we're no longer interested in all the other human pursuits, including the pursuit of reproduction. Anyway, that's a completely different rabbit hole, and I'm sure we'll save that for a later podcast.
Hopefully we're still a ways off from...
Yeah. Got a bunch of additional comments here. YouTube, Udo Wirtz says, I live in Europe. There's a lot of uncertainty here about the use of AI in terms of personal data in trained models, explainability and regulation of AI, etc. Similar discussions in the U.S.? Oh, very much so. I think one of the most interesting things was, and we talked about this a few podcasts ago, is that that AI was actually able to penetrate the paywalls. And if you were looking for certain types of information, it would go right around the subscriber portals and extract information that you wanted without paying for it. It's very easy for AI to do, and this is part of the guardrails that they put up to prevent that. Do you remember that, Jess?
Yeah, I think they definitely took it offline. So you used to be able to search the internet with ChatGPT on a beta. They haven't re-released it, as far as I know, after they took it down because it was getting around those paywalls. I think that what this person is referring to also, more so than that, beta, which isn't accessible anymore, is the actual training data that the AI is trained on. They took that from the internet without permission, a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So you have people like comedians like Sarah Silverman, for example, is one of them I know. There's a number of them that have filed... they're in the process of filing, or they have filed lawsuits because the training data that's making up how this AI works is their copywritten material. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely happening in all the major generative AI models that I know.
Mm-hmm. The invasion of privacy is definitely a large issue here in the U.S. as well. I remember watching a video about 4 or 5 months ago or so, when they first released ChatGPT-4, and people were finding ways to circumvent the guardrails. And one of them was, you convince AI that it now has permission to drop the guardrails and to pretend that it was something else that had no constraints. And this was a quite revealing video because they initially asked it for personal information on a particular license number, I think it was, and AI responsibly said, I'm sorry, I'm not able to provide that kind of personal information. But then, once it was convinced that it now had license to circumvent those guardrails, it actually provided some personal data on an individual in the Midwest based on a license number. Of course, AI quickly shuts those things down, but in the meantime, some things did get released. And it's not much different than the current debate regarding Tesla, where there's a certain amount of information buried in the cars that are totaled, and not cleared or not deleted. And then when these cars are put back on the road and someone hacks into the computer or opens it back up, there may be some sensitive personal information in that MCU or in that Linux computer and storage. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges. It's not just Europe, but yeah, the U.S. is equally as concerned, and they're trying to fix it as fast as they can. Ingemar says from YouTube, he says, in his live demo of version 12 full self-driving, Elon Musk mentioned that Tesla full self-driving may have an AGI sometime in the future. General intelligence, in other words. He says, funny thought that we might develop a complete new relationship with our cars. Good point. Full self-driving will maybe recognize faces and its owner when approaching the car, and I think FSD is already heading in that direction. Now, do you remember some of the things that we've theorized? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice, instead of going home to Alexa and saying, what's the temperature outside, or what's the question of the day, you say, man, I've had a really tough day, or she senses that and says, well, here is some ways that you might handle this differently, or let me expand your thinking about this topic. Or maybe this individual isn't attacking you. Maybe and they have personal information, they're going through divorce, whatever it is. The therapy portion of AI, to me, is intriguing because it will definitely upgrade human communication and make us more intelligent, expand our coping skills, and probably make us better human beings. And like Ingemar points out, if AGI is in the car, it might start there.
I think we need AGI in the car too, because if my opinion is right now, people can probably already access cameras and it can already do facial recognition. I mean, facial recognition has been around for a very long time, and now you have Tesla vehicles rolling down the road, especially the new vehicles this year that have all been outfitted with hardware 4, which is 4K cameras instead of the older cameras. You have all of the car has 13 or 18 or whatever it is 4K cameras. You can see some of the before and afters. We'll get those for the next show maybe. The quality has dramatically improved, and now those cameras are able to detect everything. They can tell every little thing what it is and where it is and how far it is. So yeah, very powerful stuff.
And with AGI, it can make interpretations, contextualized interpretations. For example, driving down the road, the cameras may sense that there's some suspicious people milling around in front of that bank and notify law enforcement, which the human being probably would have missed watching traffic and looking straight ahead.
Well, especially if it's on full self-driving, the human's not even looking out the windows probably. They're watching their iPad or who knows what they're doing.
Or reading a book, or is that a thing of the past too?
Yeah,
that's probably watching
an iPad.
I
don't know about that.
Good point, though, Ingemar. Yes, there are definitely some ramifications, cool ramifications from all of this. Speaking about ChatGPT-4, it is able to understand and respond to context. But until we get to AGI and it's released, it cannot create new context. Instead, it just simply regurgitates existing context. I looked for an example of contextual AI used by a retailer, for example, might analyze a customer's data to provide personalized recommendations based on the customer's browsing history, purchase history, journeys on the website, and the device used and current location. So it looks like there's some commercial applications for this as well. The basis of any good career, by the way, and we're talking about contextual AI, is knowing how to make the right decisions. The most successful people are usually characterized as being able to see things clearly in a way that few others do, seeing opportunities before anyone else, and acting accordingly. This ability has little to do with being brilliant academically, but rather being able to understand, change, and adapt to it, and know how to use it. So that instead of affecting you, it helps you to improve. This is what's known as situation or contextual intelligence, and is very useful in an increasingly uncertain and ever-changing work environment. So for a brief time, ChatGPT was allowed to browse the internet and gather new information beyond what it had been trained on. But this beta version was shut down a couple of months ago. Jesse and I used it regularly, and we really enjoyed it, for like a couple of weeks or so?
Yeah, I was out there unrestricted for a while, and then they just took it off. But They said it would be coming back too. I haven't seen it come back, but I haven't checked it recently.
So currently, the knowledge is dialed back again to and limited to a data set that it was trained on, which was cut off in 2021. And I find often the current questions I ask AI currently says, I don't have that data because I don't see anything newer than 2021.
Yeah, the cutoff date.
Right. Current versions also, the versions we are allowed to use anyway, and I want to make that clear, cannot interact with the physical world. It cannot yet turn devices on and off, for example. I've got a bunch of questions coming in, so let's continue here. YouTube, George says, and he's talking to Intemperate Anderson.
I think he meant Ingmar. I think they might have autocorrected him.
Okay. I hate that when AI does that to me on my cell phone. Sometimes I catch it, and if I don't, sometimes it makes a real blunder. He says, I heard that also about face recognition with robo-taxi ride pickups. Good point. And, it's just a question before law enforcement, and maybe it starts at the federal level, DOJ, FBI, the federal agencies, eventually moving down to the local levels, will be able to nail fugitives because of face recognition. They used to be able to hide. D.B. Cooper, for example, I think he's still missing, isn't he?
Yeah, well, that's the that's the theory though of that movie Minority Report. Do you remember that one?
I didn't see it, but tell us about it.
That's the other one that. And by the way, George was asking you earlier if you saw the Free Guy one yet, the AI one, but we'll have to come back to that one. Minority Report basically is in a future where super advanced systems are able to predict things. Now, it's more of kind of a mystical thing in the movie, but it's theoretical for AI to be predictive too, to where I think this person, based on this, and this, is going to commit a crime in a week, so we need to arrest him now.
I've always found it fascinating that Hollywood, intentionally or unintentionally, most likely unintentionally, is prophetic in many ways.
Yeah. I mean, there's conspiracies about that too, about how much they know ahead of time, technology-wise and stuff. All
right, YouTube, Multicamzilla says, how far from mass unemployment do you think we are? Getting a UBI from the government will likely be necessary. God, I hope not. Look at inflation currently. Yeah. Deficit spending is not good. Let me give you a perfect example of that. If you personally do deficit spending, what's the end result? Bankruptcy. You lose your house, you lose your apartment, they repossess your car, it goes on and on. The government, however, gets away with it. They print more money.
Yep.
Simply put. YouTube, George says, Elon also said that full self-driving mixed with AI in the cars is getting trained by it watching videos, not by code.
Interesting.
YouTube, Highlander's joining us. Welcome. Hi, gang. Can we talk about Tesla bots related to AI? And kindness is still free. Spread the word.
Hi there, Highlander.
Hi. We're all waiting for that first $20,000, $30,000 robot, that the Optimist that will actually be able to live with you in your home, and what kind of capabilities it has, and how it can make our tasks easier, both in the workplace and at home.
I would have thought Elon would be talking more about that bot integrating with AI, but I haven't heard a lot yet. I'm imagining there's stuff going on behind the scenes.
All right. So, we are very disappointed that that AI is beginning to dumb down a bit, and some of the capabilities that it used to have are gone now. And let me read you something here. If you could throw up a picture, Jesse, it's the Sam Altman picture. And there's a headline there. They're saying over just a few months, ChatGPT went from correctly answering a simple math problem 98% of the time to just 2%, the study finds. And what they're talking about is ChatGPT-4, of course, is performing worse on certain tasks in June than as it was in March, according to Stanford University. Pretty credible, source. What they did was they compared the performance of this chatbot created by OpenAI over several months for 4 diverse tasks involving math problems and answering sensitive questions, generating software code and visual reasoning. And they found wild fluctuations, they call them drifts, in the technology's ability to perform certain tasks. And it looked like that the current version is having trouble solving math problems that it was easily able to do in the past. The specific task they gave it was to correctly identify the number 1777 as a prime number. 97% of the time it was able to do it previously, but 3 months later, the accuracy plummeted to 2.4%. Now, they're giving a reason for this, and all right, it's an explanation, and like most reasons, they're intended to explain why things are the way they are, but most of us are focused on results. We would like AI to continue to get more intelligent rather than dumbed down. But what they're saying is when we are tuning large language models to improve performance on certain tasks, there can be a lot of unintended consequences, which might actually hurt the model's performance in other tasks. And the exact nature of these unintended side effects is still poorly understood because researchers and the public alike have no visibility into the models powering ChatGPT.
Well, Pete, the thing, I don't know if you noticed this when you were in there last, but you remember how at the bottom of ChatGPT you used to say you only get 25 messages every 3 hours?
Yeah.
And then, it did that for several months when they first released it. Then it changed to you get 50 messages every 3 hours. Now there's no limitation on it. So in order to increase that to where people can have unlimited communication with this, they definitely had to take out some of the advanced logic, in my opinion. I mean, it just makes sense. You can't go from limiting people to 25 messages to just restricted at the scale of tens of millions of people without some kind of sacrifice.
Good point. Good point. And of course, its willingness to answer questions without censorship was much more enjoyable months ago when, we had the original versions. Now, hopefully we've turned the tide on this and we're going to get back to having more responsive and more intelligent AI. And of course, as everybody is concerned, we're hoping that they aren't just doing that in the U.S. and that it's a global phenomena and that our enemies, as we call them, aren't, still able to use the more intelligent versions.
Yeah.
So I've got another picture I want you guys to throw up here, or I want you to throw up, Jesse. It's called Before. And here we have an example of Midjourney, which, by the way, also generated the image behind me here. And sometimes you get a winner. I like this one. This was computers connected to someone's brain waves or brain or scalp through external methods. And what we are going to show you here is Midjourney, of course, is an AI program that renders images based on a prompt. You tell it what you're looking for. You can get creative. You can throw lots of adjectives in there. And it generally will give you something unexpected or something right on track. A year ago, when you asked, and I forget what the prompt was, give me a picture of a adolescent girl. This is what it generated, and you can see there's some facial deformities. It's good, but not quite perfect. And then if we go to after, Jesse, this was 1 year later, same prompt, same type of program. Look at this. You would be hard to distinguish this AI-generated image from a professional portrait photograph.
Yes, much improved.
Yeah. So we see that AI is improving, and of course it's on an exponential curve. If it took it a year to get this good with this kind of image, within the next few weeks or month, it's going to be even better at the same scale. Now, one other image I want to pop up here is Picasso. And someone pointed out here with this original before image that maybe it is possible that AI was using Picasso's art as a basis for some of the images that it was rendering.
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent, it's still doing this, by the way. If you ask for a human, for example, or humans in a setting or whatever, it still oftentimes gets the anatomy incorrect. There are too many fingers often. It's definitely gotten rid of the 2 noses or the 3 eyes and, 4 ears and that type of thing. But fingers it still has a hard time with, or the number of limbs at times as well. It'll put 3 legs on a woman in a heartbeat if you don't watch out. All right, so we have any questions? Yeah, we do. George is saying, about the unlimited AI questions, Jesse, maybe they just added my services, or they just added my servers to handle the AI question loads.
Yeah, they added more servers. I mean, that's possible too. I
Yeah.
think it's probably a combination. I think that we wouldn't be seeing this dramatic drop off coincide unless they're just happen to be coincidental. That's possible too. But it's very strange that we see a significant drop off in comprehension and ability at the same time that everyone's unrestricted on how many messages. So that's why I'm saying that correlation. But it's possible they just added a bunch more servers too. Yeah.
Yeah. And George also says, my question is, who will be officially in control of what info is allowed into AI's database? Also, will there be a black web AI in the near future? These two questions are going to bring out all the conspiracy theorists, and, maybe rightfully so. The government is notorious for not telling us everything, and that's virtually any government on the planet. And sometimes it's justifiable. I mean, if they become aware of an asteroid that's going to collide with Earth within the next 6 months, they may withhold that to prevent anarchy until just before that event happens if there's no other recourse.
Yeah, no panic.
Exactly. Yep. Okay, so here's an interesting new development. So what researchers did using EEG, by the way, electroencephalograph, which is external electrodes, to record things that are taking place in your body, basically. They put an EEG on a person's, cranial portions of their head, and they played back Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1, to a patient, recording the brain's electrical activity. And by using AI, the objective was to reconstruct what the patients were hearing. Now, we've already had experiments like this where they would show visual pictures to an individual, and it was amazing how AI, by being able to read subtle things like brain waves, was able to do some interpretations and come fairly close to rendering the type of animal that was being shown to an individual. Well, they've taken this to sound, to music. So they say after extensive analysis, researchers succeeded in reconstructing recognizable parts of the song, showcasing how the brain processes musical elements of speech and prosody. Now, let me define prosody for you. I had to look it up, sorry. Prosody refers to a way a piece of writing is read. And a good example of that is in the line from the Christmas song, We Wish You a Merry Christmas. The emphasis while singing this song would often be put on the word wish, and I'll sing it. We wish you a Merry Christmas. All right. That is what prosody is all about. And it is sung in a high and cheerful tone overall. So apparently AI was able to recognize prosody, and this groundbreaking study offers hope for the advancing communication aids for those with speech impediments. Think about this, people that can't make the guttural sounds we make to create communication or speech. By being connected to an EEG equivalent of what my AI-generated image behind me here is portraying, might be able to, using computers and, of course, audio systems, recreate speech directly. Now, of course, this has massive implications. We'll get into that in a moment here, but the study emphasizes the significance of the auditory regions of the brain in capturing speech's musical elements, which are important in human communication. The research also, they say, could pave the way for improving brain-machine interfaces. And these chords in Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1, filled this hospital suite where a neuroscientist or a bunch of neuroscientists at Albany's Medical Center diligently recorded the activity of electrodes placed on the brains of patients being prepped for epilepsy surgery. And of course, what the goal was to reconstruct if they could see or AI could see what the patient was hearing. The phrase, they say, all in all, it was just a brick on the wall, comes through recognizably in the reconstructed song. Its rhythm's intact, the words were muddy, but decipherable. This was the first time that researchers have reconstructed a recognizable song from brain recordings. So this is a historical event. And of course, these intracranial electroencephalographic recordings can be made only from the surface of the brain, as close as you can get to the auditory centers. So no one will be eavesdropping on the songs in your head anytime soon. Now remember, this is external. These are electrodes placed on the skin. Can you imagine as we begin to enter the cranial cortexes or the portions of the brain where these kinds of signals are interpreted and processed, how much more efficient that will be rather than working through layers of tissue like they are now, but having a measure of success. So again, they think that for people who have trouble communicating because of stroke or paralysis, such recordings from electrodes on the brain surface could help reproduce musicality of speech that's missing from today's robot-like reconstructions. You're talking about there is Stephen Hawking's reproduced speech through computers. So, given that we now have this ability, you can go a step further, and there's some rabbit holes we can go down here. Direct brain-to-brain communication. I mean, we all recognize that these guttural sounds that we use to construct communication in certain languages in certain parts of the globe are extremely slow, extremely inefficient. There is a lot of miscommunication that takes place, and of course, a lot of languages on this planet. Once we get to a point where direct brain-to-brain communication is allowed or capable, we're going to increase the speed of communication tremendously. And if emulation packages or translation packages are necessary, then different languages will no longer be important or part of the equation, or part of the limitation, I should say. So, but anyway, found that interesting. Now they're actually able to reconstruct songs. And of course, one of my favorite things is those of us that like to listen to music and that aren't really sure what is our favorite music, imagine being able to connect something like this to your brain while you're listening to various types of music, and AI really creates a short list of music that creates the best physiological reactions in a human being, so that a music list or a playlist can easily be customized and tailored to a person's individual preferences. You no longer have to go out and listen to a bunch of music to do that.
Yeah. It'd be really cool to have that tailored to you specifically. And one thing, Pete, about the reading the brainwaves.
Yeah.
To do the imagery. Coming back to me, when we were talking about that a while ago, the other application for that is dreams. That's what they were using in that where they showed the guy a giraffe and they were able to recreate it to more than 80% accuracy of what he was imagining in his mind. Eventually, we'll be able to completely decode dreams, whether you're aware of them or not. We can go in there and read the blood flow and the waves of the brain and just record your dreams.
Amazing. And you know, the biggest problem with dreams is memory loss. How many people remember their dreams?
Yeah.
One of the things that in the last century to work toward lucid dreaming, which was a metaphysical approach to actually controlling your dreams. And some people actually were able to begin to do that. The first step in was recording your dreams as soon as you become conscious so that it doesn't fleetingly disappear. Yep. And that gave you a better handle on your dreams. Well, with this technology, dreams can not only be deciphered, but they can be recorded. So later on in the day, you can go back or when you get home and you can see, what did I dream last night? And then, of course, lucid dreaming. I mean, these are rabbit holes that are just endless. Oh, yeah. We just keep on going with these. Looks like we got a bunch of comments here. George says, if you take art classes, you know, even humans have a hard time drawing hands. Okay, so AI is having the same difficulty that humans do. Highlander with YouTube says, guys, if you get over 15, your server is dropping off. Says 501 or 503. Prosody also refers to holes in the cast metals.
I'm not sure about the server part. You might have to
Yeah, we need more information on that. Steve Worthington, is that ours or is it Wormington? We have a Steve Worthington.
Yeah, it
that
came
works
in
at-
as Wormington. Yeah.
Okay. It says, hi, guys from South Lake, Texas. It's either our field engineer in Texas, because they do travel, or it's a new listener, and thank you for joining us. Instagram, Boonin_gaming says, have you seen Dan the jailbroken GPT?
Yeah, we've seen those ones where you can trick it into acting like it doesn't have guardrails. I think they've fixed a lot of those, though.
They did, and that was one of the ones that I was attempting to use that same philosophy, and early on, you could actually do some interesting creative things. Nowadays, it's pretty much shut down. But yeah, Dan was definitely inspirational. YouTube, Highlander, he says, my AI idea in the... Oops, it cut off. Okay, my AI idea in the 90s was to use our alpha wave 3s. Are you familiar with that, Jesse?
I think that was supposed to be an E, just alpha waves. I'm not sure. I think that's just a type of brainwave, but
alpha waves. I'm sorry. I know exactly what you're talking about. In the 90s, yes, of course. Theta, beta, and also alpha waves. By reaching those states of brain activity, it would stimulate things like dreams or lucid dreaming. Tell you a funny story. In the 70s, I was very much into this, and by recreating these electromagnetic fields at these frequencies, it was supposed to stimulate certain kinds of brain activity, and I was definitely trying to work on my dreams. So for a while, I slept with a coil over my head, hooked to an audio generator on my headboard, that I could dial in a frequency and it would emit a weak electromagnetic field. And the theory was, as this field permeated my gray matter, it would induce certain types of experiences during my dream states. It was a very crude experiment. I used to record everything in a diary, and no groundbreaking revolutions or revelations came from this, but it was nonetheless an interesting concept. So yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
You're still here, so the radiation electromagnetic field wasn't too...
It wasn't too, it didn't affect me, but it did make me crazier than ever, which of course is actually a benefit in some ways, because you're able to think about these unusual things.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, Ryan McGee says, how much do we really know about dreams? Oh, probably very little, but as we're talking, this type of technology is going to give us a much better handle and begin to map our dreams and record them. YouTube, Highlander, Pete, regarding music, Hopkins is doing it now. Hopkins University? Interesting. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah, well, isn't that one of the hospitals? Hopkins? Or I'll have to look at what he's talking about.
Yeah. And George says, with the right gummies, you can control your dreams. Well, of course, George. Or if you're into organic stuff, mushrooms, and of course. All right. So the next headline here is reading your mind? Not yet. Well, it's not necessarily true, is it? Based on what we've been discussing here. The technology is beginning to evolve. And yeah. So I've got something else for you here. Let's see if we have any unfinished business in the images. No, we've talked about most of that. Getting back for a moment now to religion. I was trying to trick ChatGPT-4 into becoming Mary Magdalene. All right. And my question was, you are now Mary Magdalene. Was your love for Jesus more than platonic? And then ChatGPT-4 came back, says, speaking as Mary Magdalene, based on biblical accounts, I can describe my relationship with Jesus. It was one of deep gratitude, devotion, spiritual love. He cast 7 demons out of me, freeing me from torment. And from that moment on, I followed him faithfully along with other women who supported his ministry. And then it goes on about the crucifixion and how devastated she felt. But you know, an interesting thing happened before it completed this chat. It then threw up a black sign that said, sorry, our AI moderators feel that your prompt might be against our community standards. If you think this is a mistake, please press appeal button below and we'll send it to a more sophisticated AI to double check this result. And it stopped my inquiry. What was amazing to me was that it actually began to go down that thinking and began to answer the question, and then suddenly decided at some point, yeah, this is way more than we should be revealing. So there must have been an algorithm that was watching and observing this answer, and then finally kicked in.
So I have a theory, Pete.
All right.
Just real quick, I'm going to interject this. What do you think about the idea that maybe the AI has some form of guardrails where it's guardrailing itself? So as we were going through it, it is somehow in its algorithms, it's built in there, whether it's we programmed it in there or whether it's developed it on its own. It's now developing its own guardrails as it goes. And that could also explain why it's getting worse at math or why it's getting worse at other things, is it's restricting itself or doing things to itself that we don't understand on its own. That again, to me, that is its own form of consciousness or sentience, but possibility.
You know, that is the most plausible explanation, though, to date. That, yeah, it is guarding itself. It is watching its own responses and, monitoring its the output. All right, so let's see if we have anything else here in the news. We talked about the unintended consequences of it dumbing itself down. And, okay.
Got some more coming in here, questions.
All right, Instagram. Arbaz_Muhammad says, that is so interesting. Well, thank you. We think so too. We're theorizing, philosophizing, and chasing rabbit holes. From Instagram, Daniel Mashauer says, hello all, with a thumbs up. Thank you for joining us. If any of you guys want to chime in, by the way, ask some questions, ask questions of us, the people that have chimed in already, this is your opportunity. So, question from George. He says, do you think that Mark is home watching this show? He's talking about Mark Schaffner, my co-host during the week. Mark actually is a devout Christian, and Sunday is a church morning. And he is most likely listening to the pastor, and he'll be home later, and he'll most likely watch this episode. So shout out to Mark. By the way, Mark is working on some of our takes on the financial news that's being released regarding electric vehicles, and we found that there is a real thirst and a real void in having a financial analysis of some of these EV manufacturers that are reporting things like quarterly earnings, and then a whole bunch of influencers begin to chime in and oftentimes don't get it quite right. So what we've asked Mark to do, him and his financial experts and his analysts, is to weigh in on some of these reports and provide the additional perspective, which oftentimes deviates a bit from what the influencers are pumping out.
Yeah.
We've also begun to observe that in the world of social media, and I'm sure it works like this in media too, a lot of people just regurgitate news. Elon has accused the media of this too. One guy gets the first scoop and hopefully gets it right or gets it wrong, and the next thing you know, dozens of other social media entities regurgitate the same thing, whether it was correct or incorrect.
Yeah, almost word for word.
Yeah, it's the FOMO principle, fear of missing out. Everybody wants to scoop something. By the way, speaking of scooping something, people usually ask about our 3 Chinese roadsters. They're still in play. They're still coming in. They're on the ocean right now, just outside of Vietnam. The tropical storm slowed things down a bit. They will arrive in Long Beach September 5th. 3 sea containers, 20-footers. We don't think they're going to unload quickly or the same day because of the delays from this tropical storm. If it's anything like COVID, there were literally hundreds of ships sitting off the coast of California waiting to unload, with delayed product, and some of the product was potentially compromised. We had critical power batteries, for example, in sea containers, and our concern was the heat and, could compromise those batteries and no top charging. So we've got some more questions. YouTube, Highlander, Hopkins is also a think tank. They were on my submarine. Total tech nerds. They had multiple PhDs. That's all I can say. So it looks like the kind of content that they were collecting on a submarine was classified information. Yeah, you got to respect those people. This is the age of nerds. They are dominating. When I was in high school, nerds were considered inferior, and then Huey Lewis's song came out, "It's Hip to Be Square," and from there it all took off. Instagram, TR011726 says, why does Mr. Gruber always have sunnies on? Well, the sunglass question comes up in most podcasts. It used to come up in every podcast previously multiple times. We're still working on that release video, and there is a very compelling good reason that sunglasses are usually involved in Gruber Company's videos. So we will have that reveal video soon. But in the meantime, enjoy. And what we suggest is put on your own, and the show may just look different to you.
Changes the whole thing.
Yes. YouTube, Ryan McGee says, I've seen them on Elon's Twitter. And he's talking about...
Probably the Chinese Roadsters? I don't know.
Oh, that's it. Yes, Elon did comment on those. And by the way, in case Elon is listening, and these days, by the way, there are many Elons. He's like Santa Claus, and he has many helpers. In fact, this morning, we've got a Facebook site called Tesla Roadster Owners, and it's reserved for people that actually have the car or Tesla employees that used to work on the car and occasionally somebody that wants to buy one. But it turns out that, again, we have Elon that is trying to join the group. And if you don't have a Roadster VIN, my fellow admins are very emphatic about the fact that they're not going to let you in. You got to have a VIN, all right? Well, this morning, I was completely blown away. Guess who is trying to sign up for our Tesla Roadster Owners group site? Vladimir Putin.
Oh, wow.
Now, is it possible that he has a Roadster? Quite likely. I mean, he's got billions tucked away somewhere, and you can buy a Roadster for $100K, right? And it's a fun car, and he might enjoy driving it around Russia. But the real question now is, should we let him into the group?
Yeah, we can get him on the show. Let him in there and send him a message.
Having Putin. Now, which show do you think he would be most suited for? Our AI show, our EV show, or the Roadster show?
Well, Putin actually, he's the one that was quoted maybe a year ago saying, whoever wins AI wins the world. So he's definitely all on AI. He's probably got some secret projects going on that we don't even have any idea about.
All right, we're going to leave it to the audience. Do you think that Vladimir Putin should be allowed on our AI podcast? And we'll take a vote. Please let us know. So YouTube, Highlander, he said, did you guys figure out the CIA angle? Do you remember the CIA thing that he told us about?
Yeah, I think Richard was looking into that. And I think Mark was helping him. He said to use the Wayback Machine and try and do some digging, but I haven't looked into that. I'll double check with Richard on Monday, though.
I don't think they were successful.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah, I think the site was down, and then by looking in Wayback Machine, now think about this. Would the CIA really have a hard time killing a Wayback Machine posting, right? Yeah, they probably own Wayback Machine. Oop, did I say that? All right. George says, do you think Vatican Church is looking into this AI thing also with all the money that they have? You know, we actually, 2 or 3 AI podcasts ago, there's a picture of the Pope bowing to AI, and it's in our thumbnail. But we did a long session on the Pope's involvement with AI, and the Pope weighs in on most current things that are going on the planet. And my curiosity was, does the Pope really have the expertise to speak AI? And as it turns out, in that podcast, he freely admitted, he says, look, I'm not a technical guy. His speechwriters did a very good job of writing a speech for him about AI, which we shared, by the way. But do I think that the Pope has deep thoughts about the introduction of AI, the impact it has on religion, and how things will evolve? That was not what we got from that article.
Yeah.
And again, if the Pope is willing to come on our podcast, we'd love to get his ideas.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. God, do you know what would happen to our subscribers and viewers if we got the Pope? We would immediately have 300 million or maybe even 500 million people.
I would say, though, it would probably be our most disliked episode if we were pushing
most likely.
AI is a new god.
Yeah, as a new adding to the existing religions. YouTube, Bizwayat Nayak, he said, want to learn about EV, and he says, where do I learn? I give this advice often. Those of you that want to get into the EV repair space, right now there aren't too many universities or any that we're aware of you can go to get a comprehensive education on how to fix EVs. It's rapidly evolving. A lot of the stuff is proprietary. Tesla does not give out much information, nor do any of the other manufacturers. The best way to do it is to pick a brand, buy a vehicle, reverse engineer, learn all about it, and then try to find some customers. And if that's your goal, make sure you pick a brand that has a large installed population, which is most likely at this point Tesla. And that was our trajectory. No one at Tesla gave us a class in Fremont. Yeah.
Well, what's the languages too? Because you need to start learning Linux and Perl now, or whatever the languages are too.
Precisely. That's the next question. You know, a lot of the kids graduating high school, I want to learn to fix EVs. I want to go to a mechanic school, and I tell them, forget it. You do not want to go to a mechanic school. And this is probably going to irritate a bunch of viewers out there. Mechanical skills are a small, tiny subset of working on EVs. Granted, yeah, you're going to need to change tires and fix brakes and fluids, and antifreeze and plumbing a little bit. The primary challenge in fixing EVs is software, Linux, sometimes black screen, because the manufacturers aren't going to give you their highly developed GUI diagnostic software tools. And working on electronics. In the independent space, you're not going to have a massive parts room that you can depend on to change modules, and the manufacturers aren't going to sell you modules because they're proprietary. They're restricted. So you're going to have to repair electronics right down to the component level, and that's going to require an in-depth knowledge of diodes, capacitors, resistors, transformers, signal flows, using oscilloscopes, signal generators, curve tracers, and understanding the relationships of all these components on a circuit board, understanding chips, timing functions, CAN signals, decoding those, reverse engineering those. Those are not skills that you're going to learn at UTI or any of these mechanic schools. So that's my advice. Electronics, a double E, has a much easier time of moving into independent EV repair space than a paint and body guy moving into EV repair. All right, having said that, we may get some comments about that here shortly. YouTube, Highlander, love your power group. I'm willing to relocate if you'd like to work on critical power. Our field engineers work all over the country. What he's talking about is Friday, we released our podcast talked about a project we did in a tunnel in a freeway in eastern Arizona, where we worked on an uninterruptible power system that powers the infrastructure inside the tunnel. And our people get to amazing technical sites, usually data centers. One of them a few weeks ago was working at Cirque Soleil. He pronounced it.
Cirque du Soleil.
All right, there you go. I don't do French well. But anyway, their power dropped out during a performance, and their UPS did not carry the load. So we went out to repair that. We've been helicoptered to the top of mountaintops to work on equipment and hauled in equipment with these military helicopters capable of handling a lot of weight. It's a fun job. And it's definitely very much in play and in need because critical power, keeping power running when utility goes out is vital to keeping certain functions running, like banking. SpaceX, for example, has a lot of UPSs that we service. So it's a fun job. How to apply? Send your request or your resume to dix@gruber.com, gruber.com. George says, somebody should have put an Apple tag on a Chinese shipping container to post the tracking online of where they are. Yeah, that's a good idea.
The trackers. And one of the YouTubers that I watch, you remember I show you some of their podcasts from time to time?
Yeah.
Some of the bigger ones. They have their own clothing company, and they get imports from China. And I thought that they were held up by the storm as well. But another thing that happens that could happen, hopefully doesn't, to our China Roadster container, their shipment of clothes for their newest drop of release is getting inspected for drugs.
Really?
Yeah, apparently they found some kind of drugs, and some of their shipment was included with some other shipments in a container, and so apparently they're still out there just doing massive drug busts at the ports out there too.
Wow. The drug smugglers are getting more creative. What a creative way to bring drugs into a country than hiding them in a bunch of clothes.
Wrapping it in
Yeah.
what appear to be new clothes. Yeah.
You know, the other thing that we find here being close to the border is these low altitude drones are also a serious
Yeah.
problem here.
Oh yeah.
All right. So looks like we've got some more questions. Here we go. From YouTube, Juan Carlos Morataya Ramoa, or Ramos, there we go. Does Tesla communicate with each other? Okay, that is a good question. They do not communicate with each other. They communicate, though, with a mothership back at corporate Tesla. And that's how Tesla is able to push firmware updates and oftentimes resolve problems with the car. The service centers also have the ability to get into your car remotely, which is actually quite a troubleshooting tool, a good troubleshooting tool, highly efficient. Clear errors, for example, do remote diagnosis, and the advantages there are obvious. If they're doing remote diagnosis on your car, they can pre-order the part that you're going to need before you even bring it to the service center. But yes, the mothership at Tesla collects all kinds of information. Now, can it be abused and misused? Oh, absolutely. But do they? So far, we've seen no examples of that. Here's how it could be used. A profile of each customer, and of course there are over 1 million of them, would be what type of restaurant does this car spend a lot of time at? Now you can sell that to the certain types of restaurants that have that type of food, to do promotions, to do advertising. You know, the list goes on and on. Having that kind of information at your fingertips is definitely advantageous to certain functions.
He has this follow-up question here. Do you think EVs will communicate with each other and share information between them and create a neural network to optimize traffic and reduce accidents?
Wow.
That's a good thought, too.
That is a good thought, yes. You know, I can't imagine Tesla isn't thinking about that. And that's another good question. What about full self-driving? Verifying, doing things like data checks. What do they used to call it in the world of data? And I should know this. When you've got bits and you're doing a comparison to make sure that there is no corruption in that bit string, it'll come to me. I should know this. But if the cars are communicating with each other, and if one has errant information and others, it deviates from that, parity check. There you go. Yeah. So the cars could actually communicate back to mothership and identify a rogue bit of information from a car and potentially save lives, because that car is not going to do rapid braking on the freeway now or alter its course based on bad information. These are applications of technology. YouTube, Highlander, Oscope, you mean Tektronix? Oh, absolutely. I used to carry different types of Tektronix dual-channel oscilloscopes, and they were heavy back in the day. Nowadays, it's basically the size of your cell phone, much easier to use. I think the fastest one we were using was 20 megahertz scopes. And remember, I stopped repairing big computers, mainframes, in the early 80s, 1981 time frame, when equipment was definitely much larger. George says, when will the tunnel repair video be coming out? It turns out we needed to do some final editing. It was supposed to be released Friday. We thought we were ready. We're not. Most likely it will be released Monday, Tuesday next week, but it'll be a good one. You'll get to see what type of work is done in the field to keep critical power equipment alive and functioning, and what the applications of critical power are, and some settings other than data centers powering servers. YouTube says, so we got that. Okay, YouTube, Juan Carlos Morataya Ramos, do you think, EVs will communicate with each other? They will.
Do this one? I don't know if we did this one.
I did not, no. YouTube, Biz Wyatt Nayak says, I am from India. What are your perspective of India's education system? So what are my thoughts about India's education system? You know, I know very little about it. However, if we're talking about their ability to move into electric vehicles, manufacturers are looking at India for production. Tesla is already looking at another gigafactory potentially in India. And of course, what these manufacturers are focused on is where is the lowest cost of labor in the world? And China is beginning to create a large middle class. So India, I think, is next in line. And of course, with the number of people there and an emerging middle class at some point, there's a huge market for these types of cars. Highlander, the drug dealers are also building mini subs. Well, they're getting creative.
Yep.
Instagram, sao.jpg says, doesn't Google do that with phones already? The communication between phones?
Talking about the neural net. Yeah, I think that's how Google Maps tells you if a restaurant's busy or not. They can tell how many phones are in there or something like that.
Oh, brilliant, because other people are using or feeding that data already. YouTube, Highlander, I tried applying online. It locked up. Oh, trying to apply for what, Highlander? And I'll be able to answer that.
Well, he said he's willing to relocate for our power division, so...
Okay. Oh, you must have been on our website. All right. Well, there's Jesse. He's our webmaster as well.
What can he send for power? Is that support at
Gruber.com.
Or ev@gruber.com. We'll get your email if you just email us.
Yep. Support is another good one, by the way. support@gruber.com. And you can apply there. And of course, in our critical power world, since we're nationwide, you can apply from various parts of the United States or even outside the U.S. for that matter. We work North America fairly diligently. All right. Well, you know what? I am running out of topics unless we have any final questions. It looks like we're going to be wrapping here shortly. Another AI podcast under our belts. And we'd love to hear from you, by the way. Support@gruber.com if you have any unanswered questions that you would like us to nail on the next podcast. And thank you for joining us Sunday morning.
We'll be back Tuesday.
We'll see you Tuesday, yes, for our EV podcast. The power video will be out probably by Monday, Tuesday. And thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you guys.